Okay, we're going to work the first 10 questions on the navigation calculations assignment in this video. We'll work the other set in a different video. So real quick, let's take a look at question number 1. It says, refer to figure 21. So you get out your figures packet here, and we'll get that figures packet out. And we're looking for figure 21. So this is figure 21. Okay, and looking at figure 21, it says, en route to First Flight Airport, Area 5, your flight passes over Hampton Roads, Area 2 at 14:56, and then over Chesapeake Municipal at 15:01. At what time should your flight arrive at First Flight? So let's take the information we've been given here, and we're going to figure out what time we'll arrive at First Flight. So we know, according to the question, and if you're looking at the figure here, we flew over Hampton Roads here, and we flew over that at 14:56. And we flew over Chesapeake Regional, flew over this airport at 15:01. And the question is what time should we arrive at First Flight Airport here? So this is simply a time, speed, and distance question. If you measure the distance from Hampton Roads to Chesapeake Regional, you get your plotter, and you measure that distance, you would find that the distance is about 6.5 miles. It's about 6.5 miles, 6.5 miles to get from Hampton Roads to Chesapeake Regional. And we could figure out also that it is from Chesapeake Regional to First Flight is going to be about 35.5 miles. So this is 35.5 miles to get all the way down there, 35.5. So let's figure this out. We spent 5 minutes, 14:56 to 15:01, to get from Hampton Roads to Chesapeake Regional, and that was 6.5 miles. Well, if we take out our CX2, we can come in here on the flight menu and figure out our ground speed. If we knew that it was 5.5 minutes, sorry, 5 minutes, that was only 5 minutes. If we knew it was 5 minutes to get from Hampton Roads to Chesapeake Regional, and we covered that 6.5 miles, then we figure out we're traveling at a ground speed of 78 knots. Now, knowing that, we can figure out how long it's going to take. Our leg time, that's number 4, leg time. So it's to get from Chesapeake Regional to First Flight, we said was 35.5 miles. And we just figured out traveling between those Hampton Roads and Chesapeake, we were traveling at 78 knots over the ground, which means it's going to take about 27 minutes and 18 seconds to get to our destination. So what we could do from here is figure out what our estimated time of arrival is. If we're departing, if we passed over Chesapeake Regional at 15:01 and we're going to be flying for another 27 minutes and 18 seconds, we figure out that we're going to arrive at Chesapeake Regional, or we're going to arrive at First Flight at 15:28. And that is the answer for that question. If you come in here, you would say that you're going to be arriving here at 15:28. There you go. So that's question number 1. Number 2, determine the magnetic heading. They want the magnetic heading for a flight from Fort Worth Meacham Area 4 to Denton Municipal Area 1. The wind is from 330 at 25 knots. The true airspeed is 110 knots, and the magnetic variation is 7 degrees east. So magnetic heading, to answer question 3, when you're converting from true course to magnetic heading, you go from true course, you add in any wind correction angle to get your true heading, and then you add in any variation right? East is least, west is best, subtract your easterly variation, add in your westerly variation, and that'll give you a true magnetic heading. So to correct from true course to magnetic heading, you're going to correct for wind correction angle and variation. So that's what we have to do here on number 2. We have to correct for wind correction angle and our magnetic variation. So let's figure these things out. If you go into the diagram, it said we're looking at figure 26. So we bring up figure 26 and we'll rotate this. Going from Fort Worth Meacham, which is in area 4. So looking at that, here we see Fort Worth Meacham. Going from Fort Worth Meacham to Denton Municipal, which is in area 1. And looking at that, we're going up to here, Denton Municipal. We've got to measure our true course. We've got to measure the distance over, or the direction over the ground. And so you grab your plotter out and use your plotter to measure the direction. And that appears, I'm going to, on my plotter here, measure that direction, and it looks like we'll be going about 19 degrees. 19 degrees true course to go from Fort Worth Meacham up to Denton. So now what we can do is to pull back out our CX2, and on the heading and ground speed menu we can type that in there. We have our 19 degrees is our true course. True airspeed in the question said we'll be traveling at 110 knots, so we'll put that in there. Wind direction from the question is 330 and 25 knots. So when you do that, you find out that you have a true heading of 9.1 degrees. That's your true heading. But just like we said a second ago, you have to also correct for the variation, which is given in the question as 7 degrees east. So we're going to take that 9.1, which was our true heading, and we're going to subtract that 7 degrees of easterly variation, and we have a magnetic heading now of 2.1 degrees, and that was magnetic heading. So that's the answer for number 2. We've answered number 3 already, so move on to number 4. Number 4 says, refer to figure 23, determined the estimated time en route for a flight from Priest River Airport to Shoshone County Airport. The wind is given at 030 at 12 knots, and the true airspeed is 95 knots. We need to add 2 minutes for climb out. So, just like we did on the last question, we're going to use our heading and ground speed menu to find out how fast we're going, taking into account the change in our ground speed, our true airspeed due to the wind. So, what we have to know, we've got to know our true course, and it's not listed. So you'll bring up figure 23. And go up here to figure 23, and we'll rotate this. In measuring from Priest River to Shoshone County, that was area 1. Priest River right here to Shoshone County right here. We're going to measure that with our plotter. And I'm measuring, and it looks like using my plotter I get that to be 144 degrees true course. So I can pull out my CX2, I can type in 144 degrees true course. True airspeed in the question says that our true airspeed is 95 knots. The wind is given at 30 degrees and 12 knots. So that gives us a ground speed of 99.2 knots. And we want to know how long it's going to take. So the leg menu says, what's the distance? And we measure that again with our plotter on that figure. And measuring the distance from Priest River to Shoshone County, you come up with 45 knots. So it's a distance of 45 knots, and we just calculated we're traveling at 99.2, so it means it's going to take 27 minutes to get there. But don't forget, on that question, you need to add that 2 minutes for climb out. So add 2 minutes to what you just calculated, 27:13, you get up 29 minutes and 13 seconds is going to be how long it takes. This is going well. Let's do the number 5 question. Figure 22, determine the magnetic heading for a flight from Mercer County to Minot International. The wind is 330 at 25, true airspeed is 100, and the magnetic variation is 10 degrees east. So again, magnetic heading means we've corrected our true course for both winds and variation. So we have to find out what our true course is. So we're going to pull out figure 22. And on figure 22, we're going to measure our true course from Mercer County to Minot International. So going from Mercer County, which is down here, up to Minot, and using your plotter, when you measure that direction, I need to flip the plotter over here. When you measure that direction, you come up with a true course of 11 degrees. Thereabout. I mean, it could be a little different, but right around 11 degrees. So if you go into your heading and ground speed menu, you tell it's 11 degrees true course. True airspeed was given in the question. True airspeed was given at 100 knots. So say 100 knots. The wind is 330 at 25 knots. So you have a true heading of 1.6 degrees. Now the magnetic variation is 10 degrees east, so we're going to take that 1.6 degrees and we're going to subtract it, and we get negative 9 degrees something, but right, that doesn't work out for us. So if we come in here and we take that 1.6 degrees, let me go all the way back to the calculator. You take that 1.6 and subtract that 10 degrees, you're going to get a negative 8.4, but you add in a 360 to put 351.6, or if you said 352, I would take that. So 352 degrees is the magnetic heading. What's the estimated time en route from Mercer County Regional Airport to Minot International? This is question 6. The wind's from 330 at 25, true airspeed is 100 knots, add 3.5 minutes for departure and climb out. So let's pull up that figure. This was figure 22, we're already there. And they want to know how long, what's the estimated time to get from Mercer County up to Minot? Well, we just measured the direction on question 5, so we can easily come back into our flight computer here under the plan leg and that heading and ground speed. We said it was 11 degrees was the true course. We just measured that. And this question gives us a slightly different true airspeed. This question says that the true airspeed was 100 knots. No, it's still the same one, 100 knots. So we'll type that in there, 100 knots. Wind direction is 330 at 25 knots. We just solved that. And got our ground speed. 79.8 knots is our ground speed, our true airspeed corrected for winds. They want to know how long it's going to take. So if we go to leg time and we measure the distance between Minot and Mercer County, we find out that the distance between those two airports is 52.5 nautical miles. That ground speed is 79.8. It's going to take 39 minutes and 28 seconds, but they told us to add on 3.5 minutes. So that means it's going to be 42 minutes. 43 minutes, sorry. 43 minutes. You had on that half minute. This one's going well. Number 7, almost there. Estimate the time en route from Addison Airport, Area 2, to Dallas Executive Airport, Area 3 on Figure 26. The wind's from 300 degrees at 15 knots. True airspeed is 120 and the magnetic variation is 7 degrees east. Now, they're asking us for time en route, so we're not really going to need this magnetic variation for this question here. But we will need the wind when we pull up our CX2, to figure out what the time is, we've got to know our ground speed. So we go to heading and ground speed menu. Well, it wants to know true course. So we've got to pull out our map. And we'll be looking at this question. And we're going from Addison Airport to Dallas Executive. So if you measure the direction on this with your plotter, from Addison to Dallas Executive, it's about 185 degrees. So type that in here. 185 degrees is the true course. Now they want to know what the true airspeed was. So looking back at the question, our true airspeed was 120, so let's type that in. Wind direction was 300, and wind speed was 15 knots. Gives us a ground speed of 125.6, and to figure out how long it's going to take, we go back into our leg time menu and tell it the distance between those two airports. When you measure that with the plotter, you find it's going to be 16 and a half nautical miles, depending on how you measure it. We'll call it 16 nautical miles with that ground speed 125. Gives us roughly 7 minutes and 39 seconds is going to be the time it's going to take to get from Addison to Dallas Executive. So you call that 7 minutes and 39 seconds. Now, if you measured it distance slightly different, use that 6.5 or 16.5, then you're going to call it a different time, but it should be close. How far will an aircraft travel in 2.5 minutes with a ground speed of 98 knots? This question, you go into a different menu this time. You're going to go into your actual leg menu, and it looks like on this one, you're going to find out distance flown. So they told us we're traveling for 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes, and we have a ground speed of 98 knots. So that gives us a distance flown of 4.1 nautical miles. That's a pretty quick question. 4.1 nautical miles. Question 9, big question here, says on a cross country, you cross point A at 1500 and you want to reach point B at 1530. So you want 30 minutes of flight time between the two. Use the following information to figure out what is the indicated airspeed required to reach point B on schedule. So the distance between those 2 points is 70 nautical miles. So if we want to travel 70 nautical miles in 30 minutes, our ground speed, we've got to figure out what that's going to be. So you can come in here and go to the ground speed menu and tell it on this 70 nautical, or we're going for 30 minutes. 30 minutes, duration, our distance, 70 nautical miles, which means we need a ground speed of 140 knots. They want to know indicated airspeed, so we're going to have to work our way back from ground speed to indicated airspeed. So take that 140 knots and let's work back from there. So what we're looking for here is we're looking for a planned airspeed, or required. We're trying to figure out what our airspeed is supposed to be. Looking through these menus, and this one doesn't have it yet. That one doesn't tell us what we're looking for. We're looking for heading and true airspeed. We've got the true course given in the question is 270 degrees. We just figured we needed a ground speed of 140, right? And so if we take the wind out of our ground speed, we can find out what the required true airspeed is going to be. So the wind here is listed, and it looks like wind is listed at 310 degrees, 15 knots, which says we need a true airspeed of 151.8. And we're not quite there yet. We've taken the wind out of the ground speed, but we have to take out, to get indicated airspeed, you've got to go back to calibrated airspeed. So if we come back into the airspeed menu, we can find out what our required calibrated airspeed is. So we just calculated we have to have a true airspeed of 151.8, and they told us the temperature is minus 10 degrees. So temperature is minus 10 and we're flying at a pressure altitude of 8,000. So if we take out the correction from true airspeed of the density of the air, we can find out what our calibrated airspeed is supposed to be, 137.2. Now indicated airspeed, to go all the rest of the way to indicated airspeed, you need to take out any position or instrument errors. None are listed in this question. Without the POH, we wouldn't be able to go any farther. So we're just going to have to end this here. 137.2 is the required indicated airspeed. If you want to cover that distance, this is IAS. It's really CAS, but they didn't give us the chart to take out the instrument errors. So we're going to have to end right there. 137.2 is the required indicated airspeed. And our last question on this video, if a true heading of 135 results in a ground track of 130 and a true airspeed of 135 knots results in a ground speed of 140, where is the wind? And this one here, you're going to go into your actual leg menu and you're looking for an unknown wind. So if we knew our true heading is 135 and a ground speed is 140, and it says that our true course, right, is the same thing as your ground track, is 130, and your true airspeed was 135, then you'd find out the wind was from 245.1 degrees at 13 knots. And that's the answer for this one, 245 at 13 knots. 245 degrees at 13 knots. All right. So part one of the videos, I'll finish up on part two here. I hope that you're doing well with these homework assignments. Keep studying these questions. If you get them wrong, go back and take a look at them. But very good job so far, and we'll take a look at the next 10 on the second video.